in this room is a game developer who writes code? Awesome. Almost all of you. This is the game that I've just most recently published out of my studio, so grab one of those. Feel free to spruik it to the world. It's always good to get some organic love. Because I'm in the indie development thing, I'm always trying to drive my costs low. So one of the things I'm going to highlight today about contrasting our particular tool chain that we use for building games with some of the others that are available is cost and also the licensing impact. But I just got back from a trip to Seattle and LA. I was speaking at Indiecade over there. And it's pretty interesting, the variety of development work that's going on. A lot of studios are still working with C++, even on mobile, just because they've got the legacy tools, or that's the expertise in-house. And places like Big Fish Games, for example, they're going to so many different platforms that they really want to be able to address, Windows Phone or whatever, so they have their own tool chain for that kind of stuff.
Sarah, just going to send Prebuilding, just because you actually just right behind the fold.
Oh, right. Yeah, okay. I'll try to move across a little bit. Let me do that. Yeah, so I will admit I'm trolling you guys a little bit today with the title of my talk, but what I really want people to do, especially if, whether you've been in game dev for a long time or whether you're just starting out, is to just try to maybe challenge yourself a little bit with the decisions that you make about what tool chains you use. Oh, no, it's fine. I just had to reboot it. So it should come up in a sec. There we go. I've seen, probably in the last 5 years or so, engines become a lot more popular, especially for people who are getting going in game development. They're a way to get started really quickly, and obviously there's trade-offs to be made. Who here has used an engine like, say, GameMaker? Anyone using GameMaker? Yeah, great little tool. Obviously Unreal Engine at the other far end, C++ based engine. Anyone? Yep. All of these are supported by a nice workflow where you've got a GUI client that you're going to be using inside of your development setup, and that tool actually provides not just programmers but also artists and other creatives on the team with the ability to have my laptop crash. That's interesting. Is it shutting down because of power? That would be very annoying. This is a 2012 MacBook Pro, so it's had a good 4 or 5 years. Come on, Petal, you can do it. Keep going. Just another hour, that's all I'm going to ask. Seriously. Just keep going just a little bit longer. That would be super neat. Yeah, so I gave a presentation here a little while ago, which was called very similar to this, and I just wanted to get people thinking about it, to just bust out of their preconceptions. Like, I've had 15 years of software engineering. I worked for a company building embedded Linux devices back in the day. Took that to a career in Linux phones, worked for Google in Mountain View. And from there, back to Australia, where I worked for Nokia, building OpenGL frameworks for Linux-based phones. And in that time, it's sort of, the accepted wisdom changed from things like OpenGL with, maybe things like Ogre 3D on top of it, over to using engines. And I think a big reason for that is like these crazy devices are so powerful now that they're as powerful as the desktop computers of 4 or 5 years ago. So you can sort of get away with some pretty fat technology. But at the same time, you wind up making some compromises. Now, please, laptop, just stay working for just a little while. So I'm just going to pull this up. No, I don't want Java right now. If anybody can't hear me, please just scream out. I will try to talk as loud as I can. I have the microphone just there. But yeah, so I am trolling you a little bit, but I'm also only serious. I've found that over that period of my career, technologies have changed a lot. And if you wind up getting rusted on to some particular technology stack, and that's kind of all you know, then you reduce your own ability to innovate, you reduce your value to other employers, and you also have less fun. Like, it's a lot of fun to try out new different stuff. So I'm trolling you a little bit, but only serious. I just want to get you guys to think. So most of this presentation is going to be me live coding. So I've just got 1 or 2 slides. I just want to set this up for those who may be watching the video and don't know the significance. Basically, when I talk about an engine, what I mean is the situation you have on the right-hand side, where when you build your game, it ships onto the client devices as some big blob of data, and the phone or the Xbox or whatever it happens to be launches someone else's binary executable. So in the case of Unity, it'd be the Unity runtime. And then your game is data that lives inside of the memory of that process, and it's what's called a hosted application. So it's effectively hosted inside of Unity. The very latest versions of Unity, Unity 5, they implemented a thing called IL2 CPP, which means that like a lot of their code is actually, you write it in C#, but it's getting compiled to native. There's a bit of bloat along the way, but it's still a lot faster than it was. So the performance considerations are not as big as they were, but there is some size bloat, and there's also some bloat on launch, because when your app first gets kicked off by the player, that's all got to load up into memory, so you've got quite a lot more that your baggage that you're carrying around with the engine case. But you've got masses of power. Today I'm going to be talking about 2D almost exclusively. So I think in the 2D case, what I've done, I use the SpriteKit thing. SpriteKit is not an engine, right? It's Apple's answer. The things that you're going to see when I work on my code today are some of them are going to be familiar to you if you've used a tool like Unreal or whatever, but despite all appearances, all of those things are programmer productivity tools, are tools in a tool chain, and what you wind up with is your game is the executable. So somebody presses an icon, bam, your game is the thing that takes control and gets to run on the CPU. It's a fine distinction, but I think out of all of the useless technical distinctions, there's a number of things that wind up being pragmatically important. And I think to date, right up until Xcode 8 with iOS 9, I think. They had some really good tooling in there for game developers. It was starting to come online, but there was a big thing missing from Xcode, which is Apple's IDE, and that was team collaboration. That missing thing, I think, is really almost completely gone away, or it's really starting to. What I'm going to show you today, if you take away nothing else, try to look for this one. Try to think, if I was using these tools, could the artists and audio folks on my team find a way to actually get involved with this tool chain and start tweaking numbers and updating things themselves? So I think that's one of the big things that's happened. So from there, I'm just going to hopefully leap in and we'll see if we can show you guys with an actual demonstration. All of the code that I'm going to show today is in my GitHub repo, which is Sarah J. Smith. So here we go. I've created this sort of how-to file here, which has, it's just a markdown file with some stuff in it. And there's going to be a big gap at the end, which is kind of an exercise for the reader. So if you dig out and dust off that old ancient 2012 laptop that's been knocking around the house and decide to have a go with some of this stuff, which I'd commend you to doing, you can get a kickstart by using that thing. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a new project. And it's going to be an iOS game. So it's going to run a wizard, and I'm going to call it Game Tech B&E 1. It's going to be a Swift game. Swift is Apple's latest language, introduced a few years ago. It's now been open sourced. I'm going to run it on the iPhone only. And this one is new in iOS 10, Integrate Gameplay Kit. So as far as I know, Apple is the only phone vendor out there producing game APIs like this for us game developers. Google has its sort of Google Play type stuff and some leaderboards things and a few other bits and pieces. And for sure, there's plenty of game frameworks you can use on Android or Windows Phone or whatever other phones you've got. A lot of them are C++ cross-platform things. Apple's actually spending a lot of engineer hours making us some tools. One of them that's super interesting is Gameplay Kit. And with this magic checkbox, we actually get to integrate it right into our IDE. So it's kind of nice. Right, so we have, my laptop keeps working. Please, laptop, don't stop again. I'm just going to be super nice to you. I'm going to run a QuickTime Player here, which should hopefully allow you guys to see this screen. No, you don't want to see me. Oh my God. Let's go to my phone. There we go. The enormous phone of the totally ridiculous. This thing has 3x pixels. They are downsampled in hardware to about 2.3, but the video RAM on this device takes 3x artwork. So you'll know that Retina on a standard Retina phone is 2x. This is taking 3x stuff. So yeah, pretty huge, right? Totally nuts. So when I run this, it will hopefully run on an actual real device. Now, if you haven't seen how this stuff works before, one of the critiques that I hear from people who use Unity, and it's completely valid, is that it's kind of a pain to get your shit running on an iPhone if you're using Unity. But you saw me just create that project, and if I have a little bit of luck, maybe it'll actually run. Okay, so it's running here on my phone right now. There we go. Okay, so maybe 60 seconds to get a game running with SpriteKit. Okay, so one of the things that's super neat about engines is you can get some kind of big landscape happening really, really quickly. I've read books on Unity and you sit down with them and you're like bam, 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 an hour later you've got this massive terrain happening. One thing that's kind of interesting with the latest features in Unity is they put into this thing a tile map editor. So I'm just going to go into my scene here. This is Apple's scene editor tool. So I'm just going to zoom that down a little bit. And by the way, guys, this is live. I am not a hologram. So, oh, seriously, what are you doing to me? That's.
You did tempt the gods.
I did tempt the gods of fate, yes, didn't I? Could somebody just check that screen there and see if something weird just happened to that screen?
Is your laptop still on?
Doesn't seem to be. Actually, does somebody have a Mac Power Pack? Because
no, I didn't bring it today. I think battery will do.
yeah, because it could be that we're running low on power.
I saw that it was pretty high on power before.
Yeah, I know. It's running off of should be plenty of power. Yeah. Seriously, laptop, you are messing with my feng shui right now. But yeah, so live coding, I will make some mistakes, no doubt. Didn't lose too much. Could be, maybe if I just wait for stuff to happen. Maybe I had too many things plugged in. All right, I'm not going to tempt the game, the live demo gods anymore. I'll just try to be very quiet. Yeah, so scene editor. I'm just going to remove this label out of here. Delete. And I'm going to edit the properties of this scene. I'm going to make the background color of it kind of a bit grey. And I'm going to make the size the same size as my iPhone 6 Plus. I'm going to call it Tech B&E Scene. Okay. And I'm going to try and add a tile map node in here. Like that. Put it in the middle. And I'm going to add a TileSet. Has anybody ever used a tool called TileEd? Anyone here use TileEd? It's an open source thing, kind of cool, and it produces a data file like a JSON and a whole bunch of images. And it then allows you to put that data into your game where it can be read by client code in the game. What they've done is integrated that kind of thing directly in here. So I'm going to call this a garden tile set. Create. Now, if I had a whole bunch of cool artwork, what I could actually do is come in here and drop it in to replace these tiles. So you can actually see that these individual images, there's a texture there that's been added. You actually have the ability to animate these. So if I show you the water tile set, you can see what that looks like. So I've got some animating water there. But we're just going to use their sample one for now, just to get moving a bit more quickly. Go back to our game scene. And in our tile map node, I'm going to tell it to use our garden tile set. So it's going to be see, there we go. There's the bounds of the tile set. Do I have a mouse? Might be a bit more. There we go. Yay, mouse. A little bit more productive. So you can see that the screen of our game, which is the white square, that's the camera if you like, is quite a lot smaller than the actual game. So we're going to have some kind of big open worldish type tile map that represents our game. So let's edit this guy, put some stuff in here. I'm going to do some fill and then maybe add some other kinds of tiles in here, a bit of sand. Oops. Let's go back to the pen. Some stuff around, a bit like that. Maybe some water. Bit of a lake. There we go. Maybe some bricks. You could maybe make some walls like this. And let's see if that's actually going to run. Come on, laptop. You can do it. I really am tempting those game dev gods by unplugging and replugging all the time, aren't I? I'll just let it launch first. Maybe if I connect, so I'm connected, then try it running, please, pretty please. Trying to pump a lot of data up and down that USB cable, and it's not happy with me doing that. One thing that's super interesting about using these native tools as well is that you saw when I looked at those tile images, and I'll show you how this works again in a second, that there's the three different sizes. So there's 3x Retina, 2x and 1x. Apple has this new stuff called app slicing and or app thinning, where it tries to minimize the amount of bytes that are going to be inside of your download package. And it does that by creating a separate package for each device. So if I connect to it with my to the App Store with my iPhone 6 or 7, it's going to pull down that higher Retina artwork, but it's not going to include the other two lower density, standard density pieces of artwork. So it's actually going to make for a much thinner download package. And in the free-to-play space, that's much, much more important than it used to be, because I think now free-to-play it's kind of like an extension of the web. Like someone's out there, they find your game on social media, and they want to just quickly download it because it's a free game. They want to try it, find out what it's like. That they don't want to mess around with a big, huge download that's going to take a long time to come down. So,
They haven't paid anything, they're not committed.
yeah, that's right. So the only thing that's going to cost them is the actual bytes to download. So the more you can do to make it smaller, the better. All right, I'll just clean that. I'm going to, I'll just keep going for a little bit here. Let's just have a look at what the asset pipeline for Xcode looks like. So we're going to try and drop our hero in there. So I used these two sprite packs, which are both free to download. This guy's stuff is actually super neat. So I've got my zombies from here, my Adventure Girl sprites from there. And if I actually unpack, say, this one, you can see these PNG files here. I use a bunch of different tools when I'm developing for Mac, but they actually put some kind of neat stuff in here to help you with just the labor of renaming files. So I'm just going to prefix all of those files with the word hero. There we go. And I'm going to remove those parentheses and spaces from there. So I'm going to find the single bracket and replace it with nothing. Then I'm going to find the space and single bracket and replace that with nothing. So now I've got some much more manageable sprites. So I'll put those over there, bring my game back. I've got my hero character here. I'm going to drag into the scene. See if we can get our hero in there. Obviously much too big, so I'm just going to scale her down a bit. Now that's going to be the size of the phone, so I think probably about there-ish, maybe 105 points wide. Points are now my game world point size, so that's how many logical points across and down. And that will map onto the device here because I'm using the iPhone size. But obviously within that, there's actually going to be 3 pixels to every one of those points on an iPhone. If I used this thing, which has standard definition, it would use the SD artwork and it would show a different area of the game. Behind the scenes, Xcode handles that stuff for you. So let's just see. So we have that, we have this. Let's see if I can just see that on the screen. Okay. All right, so we've got our character there, but no tile map node for some reason. Could be all sorts of reasons for that. Did we remember to put the tile set into the build? Yep. I'm going to add another node here. So it's going to be a color sprite. Tile map, how big is it? Tile map, how big are you? You are 24 by 128, which is 3072. So I'm just going to create a background here, which I'll call the base layer, because we've got kind of a transparent tile map. I'll make it 0, 0. By the way, if anyone's got any questions at any point, please just scream out, stop me, and there are no bad questions. Chances are someone else wants to ask the same thing.
Support for vector image formats?
Um,
I thought I read something like that.
yeah, they did do some stuff where, as part of the compile and build process, they can actually suck out vector information from a... Yeah, you have to encapsulate the SVG into a PDF and then put that into your project. And it sort of doesn't wind up saving you that much because it will still ship. It just that when it builds the project, it's actually going to produce the artwork for you at the 3 different scales. So it does save you that little bit, but...
I was kind of hoping particularly for application icons.
Right.
You usually then have to go with the
Yeah, application icons are a massive pain. All right, let's have an application icon because I think things are always better with an app icon. So I'm going to come over here to our resources folder. This is pretty much how I work when I'm building my games. I'm going to make a little temporary folder because I have actually gone ahead in advance to speed things up. Created a folder there with all my sprites, but I'll just show you how I sort of do it. So here's our icon, and I'm just going to use one of the sprites as an icon. I have a shell script. When I'm not clever enough, my shell scripts can be clever enough for me. I put some of those also on my GitHub, so if you want to use them, please feel free to grab them. And I can jump in here and over here. We're just going to have iOS phone, so that's all we need. And put that there. Go to where our icons went to in here. And we want, let's see. We want the iPhone app icons at 60 points. So we want a 2 times and a 3 times. So it's going to be 120 and 180. If I screw up my maths here, guys, I'm counting on you to back me up, okay? Just throw some rotten fruit or something. There's every chance that I will get this completely wrong. We don't need the spaceship anymore, so let's get rid of that. Remove selected items. Okay. I'll just delete these old versions off of here. Okay. So now, just going to force Xcode to flush all its development caches. See if that makes our refresh get fixed. Yeah, so we got our little icon there. Still no tile map. All right. Kind of annoying. Game scene, tile map node. Sure, we'll just call this background. It's not hidden or anything, is it? Ah, okay. It forgot the tile set for some reason. Let's try again.
So while you're doing a 2D game and your own use, I think is 2D, does this tool set have a 3D scene?
Yeah, it does. So I think the Vainglory guys did a prezzo at one of the Apple keynotes a while ago. And Apple has its own, what they call SceneKit. So you're seeing SpriteKit here today. They have a thing called SceneKit, which does their 3D stuff. And what's super interesting about this, and this is another reason to use it, I'm going to try and make it as hard as possible because there's so many pros on the side for engines like Unity. Unity comes with massive power, and there's so much there. But if you use the native stuff, what's really interesting is vectorization. All of the data types under the hood are like right down to the silicon optimized. So it uses Apple's Metal rendering framework, all the vector types in all of the 3D vertices in SceneKit. So every time you do transformations and stuff, they're going to be happening in silicon. And you can get to there with a lot of really good engineers working on, like if you've got something on Unity and you spend a lot of time on the back-end plugins and stuff, you can get some of that access to that native power, but it comes so easily when you just do it this way, and they're bringing that to 3D as well. So it's kind of nice. All right, so we have a little hero there. Yeah, she's not doing too much right now. Let's see if we can get her moving around a little bit. Right, so the first thing I'm going to need to do is create some animations. So for that, we're going to have to revisit Apple's asset pipeline. I'm going to create a asset catalog, which is basically a giant folder. That's really all it is. I'm going to stick this guy down into here. And I'm going to create some sprite sheets inside of here. Sprite Atlas, there we go. So we're going to have one for our hero. And because we're going to have some enemies, hopefully, we're going to have one for our zombie as well. Now, I'll just quickly show you what I do for getting my artwork in for sprite sheets and animations. So let's imagine I have my frames of my hero animation here. Oops. So that's the hero idling, the hero running, right? And what I want to do is get those assets in to Unity. Now if I look, sorry, that was a slip of the tongue, wasn't it? Okay, so here we go, game scene. So I know that my hero needs to be about 105 points in width. So what I'm going to do is create 3 different versions, one at 105 pixels, one at 210, one at 315. So to do that, I will hopefully see if I can get this right. Put that there. And it's going to be 105. Now, my scale to width script underneath it just uses a tool that Mac ships for free called SIPS, which is their scriptable image processing system. Pretty handy, pretty powerful. It can do most of the stuff you need with icons, and in this case, whoops, misnamed it. Has anyone here not used a terminal? Don't be afraid to admit it if you haven't.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. There's a few basic things you can do with the terminal that are really pretty powerful. You don't need to learn the whole thing, but just being able to do stuff like this is pretty awesome. So that's going to get us our 3 hero sprites, but if I wanted to do the whole folder, I could do this. I could have a look at it to see if I typed it right.
The way you screen arrange there with the binder on the left and the terminal window on the right, is that fancy tiling window layout there?
It's actually a little thing here called Better Snap tool, which I absolutely love. Yeah, it means I can do a lot of stuff just using keystrokes. So, for example, here's my Finder window. Put it where I want, maximize it, put it on the left and the right. So now I've got all my sprites, my different sizes there, ready to drop into my game. So I'll just create one more sprite sheet here. We'll see what this import process looks like. Objects, we'll call them objects. Okay, so here's our hero sprites, and put you over there. Up there. Okay, so I'll go to the ones that I baked earlier. So we're going to have hero, we want our hero to idle. So I'm just going to drag these in. I want our hero to be able to attack. Run. And unfortunately, probably also knowing how crap I am at video games, die as well. Now what this is actually going to do under the hood is, if I expand this out again, so I've got a 363 by 363 version. Because my script gave them the correct anointed and appointed names that Apple's tooling wanted, with the @3x at the end, it knew to put them in like that. So it's pretty quick, right? It's not too hard to do. And within the binary that ships onto the device, what is going to happen is that it will build a texture, so 2048 by 2048 or whatever the large size for the device is known to be, and tile and arrange all of our sprites into that, just as you would expect with any manually created sprite atlas. And if we've got more sprites in this sprite atlas folder than will fit into a single texture, it will just create a book of texture atlas pages. And it does all that for you behind the scenes without you having to do anything, which is kind of nice. Thanks, Tim. So I'm going to go back to my game scene. I'm going to remove my hero. I should use the mouse. Into the trash, game scene. I'm going to delete my hero out of here. Delete. Now I'm going to add it back in using a media browser here. Once you start getting a lot of images, it can be very hard to find them, which is hence why it's pretty important to give them useful names and to be able to spell them, which I can't apparently. There you go, there's our hero back again. Now I'm just going to make sure that I've made our hero the right size. We're going to call her a good name. Maybe we'll call her Player. How about that? 132, is that correct? 132 by 111. Let's just double check the point sizes. $132 by 111, yeah. And you can see you've got quite a lot of control over your sprite sheet construction and stuff here as well. So if you want to optimize stuff down even further for what kinds of hardware you've got, there's a lot of ability to do that. Also gives you some backwards compatibility, kind of nice. Now, we want to animate our hero, so let's do that. We will create a new file, which will be an action file. And it'll be called Hero Actions. So we've got about an hour, is that right, Ollie?
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm going to keep going for about another 20 minutes. Then I'm going to cut straight to the version of the project I have, which is in source control, which has some more stuff in it. And that will be sort of about 2/3 of the way through what would be, if I was doing this as a whole long workshop thing, just so you can see where that got to, and that'll give us enough time for some questions. Is that okay? Does that sound about right? Cool. Okay, so some hero actions. So this is their animation editor, which is not too bad. We're going to add some hero animations. We're going to do hero run. We're going to do hero attack. We'll do hero die. And hero idle. I always spell idle wrong. I don't know what it is. Something's messed up with that. So we're going to do frame-based animation for each one of these. Drop that guy in there. And so here's for our run. Switch over to our media browser. hero run here. I need more coffee. My mouse foo is failing. Right, so we've got our hero running. Now that would just run one cycle. We want to run it multiple times. So I'm just going to tell it to animate and loop with the run forever. Going to do the same thing for idle. I've got to just get this queued up here. Some of these tools are a little bit pernickety, and after you've used them for a while, you get to know their little sore points. So it can be a little confusing sometimes about whether it even wants to let you select the whole lot. There you go. Here, idle. And I could change the duration of that, which would speed up, slow down the animation. Okay, and we're going to make that loop forever. Hero attack.
With the duration, can you do it for each frame, like each individual image, or is it for the whole animation?
You can't, unfortunately, specify the time for each individual image, which is kind of annoying. You can double up the images, which sometimes gets you there, or you can weld two animations together, and you can actually copy individual frames around the place as well. So, like, you know, sometimes you want to like have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, or whatever, so like a looping cycle. So there is a bit of ability to edit stuff, but you eventually get to the point where you have to write your own sort of thing. But I've found for almost everything that I've needed to do, there's been enough power in this. But yeah, you can't specify individual times using the frame-based animation thing. Hero attack. But yeah, that's a good point. The tools, I think, are simple enough that you can get started with them relatively quickly.
Yeah.
But does somebody want to jump up and just try to hit that aircon button again? I think it's just getting a bit muggy.
It's like you're still learning.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I guess we've got the sun bearing down on us. So if we go to our game scene, and I'll open the animation pane here. Now player, go to the browser, find our hero animations. I should be able to put that on there like that. This is just temporary, see if we can get this to work. Oh, pre-building is bad. Sometimes when it does pre-building, it means it's crashing. It's like, me no crash? No, I'm just pre-building. Oh, you're an asshole. I hate you. One of the things about the tooling here, well, I get asked this question sometimes. I'll just let that pre-build for a bit longer. I get asked this question, why doesn't Apple port their IDE to Windows or Linux? One of the reasons is that the view that we have in that pane there is actually a raw OpenGL view. And the reason that they can create these SpriteKit scenes and the 3D, they have a 3D scene editor as well. The reason all that stuff works at all is that it's actually using the Mac desktop game engine to render all of the components that you're creating on the screen of the Mac. So you've actually got your OpenGL window running in there controlled by the game. So it's quite easy while you're editing to get the editor into a state where it actually reaches deep inside the brain tissue of your Mac and just reef some of it out, and then the whole thing just dies. They've gotten a lot better. When they first shipped the SceneKit editor, if you plugged in an external monitor, your whole Mac would just die instantly, like down to the little white dot and reboot. It did that for quite a long time. So, not good. So, I think still convinced that it's pre-building, but I do not believe you. So, let's stop that task. Now we get the beach ball of death. Get the Xcode not responding. Who loves programming? Programming is great. I wish I'd been an artist. Right, let's try this again. Hopefully we didn't lose too much. Let me close some things.
Do you want to be an artist so your Photoshop and Maya crashes?
Someone's noticing, I wish I'd been home.
Yeah. Stuff crashes, right? Oh man. What did we lose? We've got some actions. We've got our hero actions still. Oh yeah, not too bad. Hero die. We lost hero die. All right, let's just reinstantiate that. It'll take a second. Hero die. Dead.
This is because it's auto-saving? Okay. It's loading an autosave, or does it have some other form of recovering lost?
Its data model is typically to write directly to the hard drive while you're working on the game. So every time I run it, before I run it, it's going to autosave all the files. And all of these .sks files, the ones that I'm editing, again, it's serializing them directly while I'm doing it. So yeah, it does do auto saving as well, but I generally have that turned off. Animate with textures. I did. Okay. Well, this one, by the way, we're not going to repeat this one, but we are going to drop in a fade to alpha immediately afterwards. So after the hero dies, it's just going to fade away. Right. Okay. So let's try this again. Game scene. Animate. So we have our hero idle in there. This time for sure. You are not idling. All right, what did I do wrong? Should be able to, I should have tried this out before. It is actually idling there. Maybe it's just not doing it very much. Anyway, I won't worry about that now. That's sort of icing on the cake. What I'm going to before I run out, I don't want to run out of time before I can show you something real quick here, which is components. So this was kind of the big ticket item, I feel like. So I'm going to just dive in and pull out the components that I wrote already for this. So I have my project. And how I see this working is a little bit like your open source thing now, and kind of the community that you have around Unity, where you can like pull stuff down from a store. You got all these rope bridges and all kinds of different bits of community supported stuff. I think what's going to happen, there's a pretty good open source community around Apple stuff. People are going to be creating components. And until I do, you guys can at least download the components that I wrote here and use them. You're welcome to. The MIT licensed. So as well as that, I have some support classes here. And these SKT utils actually come out of another open source Apple project by a guy called Ray Wenderlich. He's got some pretty good stuff. So I'm just going to see, put this into this other project. Build Game Tech Brisbane 1. And here it is over here. So we can take these and I'm going to drop them in here. And I'm going to add some files. Add that, that, and that. Right, so we have some of these components that I wrote. And so we've got our hero character here. This is new in iOS 10, the component editor. So what I can do, hopefully, is add a player character component. And under the hood, what that's going to do is it's when it's loaded into the scene, it's going to set up a physics body, and it's going to hook that sprite up into the AI system, that gameplay kit that I was telling you about before. So that uses an agent, and it just updates the agent. So it's basically just binding that stuff together. The other thing that I created here was a mob. So mobs have some animations, and at load time it's going to stick those animations in there, and it's going to have a look at the current state of the little mob and apply the appropriate animation with any sort of luck, maybe. Here's hoping. We'll see if it works. So these would be our off-the-shelf components. I'm going to add another one in here. Where did I put it? There it is, mob state. Okay, so it wants to know what our animations are called, and of course they come out of our hero actions file here. So hero attack, run, die, and idle. Hero attack, hero idle. I don't know why I spelled that wrong. Duh. Hero die. Die. Hero idle. Dill. Hero run, right? Now the other thing we need to be able to do is somehow get our hero to move around, because it's kind of boring if it just sits there. So we're also going to add in a move with touch component that hooks up our sprite to the touch interface. Again, it's just a couple of lines of code. Now, if this actually worked, I would be truly stunned and amazed, but there's a chance. So here's hoping. I haven't got rid of the old touch handler. I know what's wrong. Oh, idiot. Okay, so I needed to come in here to my game scene and replace it with the new improved gameplay scene. Like that. Gameplay scene. Gameplay scene. You are spelled correctly, aren't you? No, did it the wrong way around. That was one of those deliberate mistakes I was telling you about. I can code good. Right, let's try it. Yeah, what this gameplay scene does is its job is to basically hook up the AI system and the entities into the launch and also manage the touch stuff. There we go. So now our character can run around. All right, so that's how things get built. I'm running out of time, so I am going to go out of live coding mode and just quickly show you a project that I baked earlier, hopefully, which is this one. This has a bunch of interesting stuff in it. So I've put into here some treasures for our hero to pick up. We've got some enemy zombies. I'm also using the new nav mesh component that Apple's created, which is really pretty cool. Allows you to create little meshes for enemies to walk around on. I can also add physics fields, so I could make like the water flow and make zombies get swept away by them or whatever. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do. What I've done is some of these zombies have different AIs controlling it. So this is a wander zombie. He's just going to blunder around protecting this chest. This one, on the other hand, is going to follow the path. So it's going to sort of like patrol around the place. And I can also have, I'll just, if I change this one from being a follow path zombie to be a seek player zombie. So I've given it a brain transplant, see how it likes that. I've also added some components to the camera to make the camera follow the touch of the hero. We'll see if this is actually going to work. Again, it would be nothing short of miraculous if it did, but who knows. Please, please work. Okay, so here's our pursuing zombie. Yeah, run away. Got a chest. Of course, I could add shooting and all kinds of stuff. Oh, I didn't fix that chest. I forgot to put the behaviour, the components onto it. And there is sound actually, by the way, as well. Yeah. Oops, trapped. Ah, go away, nasty zombies. Actually, if I let them kill me, watch this, it should be fun. I added a health component, so the health gets depleted whilst it's being attacked until you eventually die. All done with replaceable bits and pieces. All right, well, I am going to stop there because I know it's hot and everybody's just coming off lunch, so I don't want to put you guys all to sleep. But that is Sprite Kit. That is iOS 10 gameplay kit components. A lot of power there. And hopefully you can see that you could have your programming team set up a bunch of these components, then let your artists and animators loose, dropping components onto sprites and having good fun and building straight onto real devices. Yeah, okay. That's all I got. Question time.
How hard is it to port that to some other system if you want to like run on something other than iOS?
So it runs with very little porting on Mac, iPhone, iPad, including this ridiculously enormous thing, which is almost a PC, Apple TV, so there's quite a few platforms there. Our plan, so my game Pandora's Books is written on SpriteKit, and our plan for going to, say, Android, Windows Phone, all of those things, our plan is called Sergey, and he lives in St. Petersburg, and he charges about $25 an hour to write Android code, which is about a quarter of my hourly rate. So that's what my Android and Windows Phone plan looks like.
So outsourcing it.
Yeah, yeah.
So basically rewriting the project in different language.
Yeah, so yeah, the toolkit that I would use is called Cocos 2D-X, which is a work-alike for SpriteKit. Uses very, very similar tooling. And when Apple built SpriteKit, they followed a model that was set up by the original Cocos. So there's a Cocos for Objective-C. They ported Cocos to Swift. There's Python. But the one that seems to have really gotten traction is Cocos 2D-X, which is a C++ framework. Really fast, runs on Windows and Android, using the Android NDK. But best of all, it uses SK action, so it has a Cocos action, a CC action. So you basically put the two things side by side and say, here you go, Sergey, just make that look exactly like that using all of these, and take all that artwork, put it in there.
Is this serialized to XML or something that you could share the data directly with the
A lot of it is serialized to JSON under the hood. Unfortunately, the SKS files don't work that way. So they are a kind of a pain. If you've got people on your team who are building, who are working with level editing tools, creating levels, they'd probably have to replicate some of their work for the different platform. That's how it is at the moment, but there's some really interesting things happening with Swift. Back when I was using Objective-C for all my game development work, there was a group called App Portable who ported SpriteKit and a lot of Apple's foundation classes to Android using Objective-C on Android. So I think the same sorts of things will happen. They're already using Swift on the server side at the moment. It runs pretty good on Windows, Swift already. So I don't think it'll be long before we have a solution where there's much, much less porting effort. But the reality is, I spent well over a decade of my career working on cross-platform toolkits. So I worked on a thing called the QT project, which was used for some of Nokia's Linux phones. And you always have something less than 100% code reuse. If you're really lucky, I think, if you're going from one touch device to another, it might be about 80%. Say if you build for SpriteKit using, say, Unity or something like that, you might get a really large amount of reuse. But your in-app purchases or your leaderboards, all of those things, they're not going to come across without some porting effort. So what I quite like to be able to do is to get the game working really, really well on a profitable platform like iOS. And then when I know I've got something that's really worth sinking the money into. So what happens is if you take that porting hit up front by trying to maintain multiple platforms, you just wear that cost straight out of the gate. my advice would be if you're an indie and you want to start up your own gig developing a game, it would be to pick a platform and really nail that and not have to launch onto the market. Like, go for the Google Play. Like, if you like Android, if your expertise lies in that area, build for Android first and get your marketing down right, get the gameplay right, get your monetization right, whether it's upfront or whatever. Get all of that working on that platform. Then execute a whole new strategy on your other platforms. Because if you try to do them both at once, especially as an indie with a tiny, tiny team like mine, there's only 3 of us, you just do not have the resources to try to run an effective game development operation across multiple platforms. That's my take on it anyway. Yeah.
Is that true for desktop platforms as well?
I think Steam makes things a little bit different, depending on what you're doing. Like, if you're doing something that's really graphics intensive and you want the best, latest DirectX shaders and you want to just limit yourself to Windows, I think that makes a lot of sense. If you've got some funky indie game or something and you want to be able to address a much broader market and you don't care about, high intensity graphics or shaders or, model serialization or something like that, then, you can probably just target sort of, a lower end, more portable subset for your graphics and just go like Mac, Windows, Linux or something on Steam.
Something like libGDX or something like that?
libGDX is kind of interesting, actually, especially for 2D games. Yeah, libGDX is plenty powerful. There's a lot of cool tools for it and stuff. And if you know Java, it works pretty good because you can then take it to Android as well. You've got native onto all the Google Play APIs, so it's pretty nice from that point of view. But yeah, I think my own take on it, like the 2D stuff, I prototyped my last game using Unity in 2015, using Unity's 5.x 2D toolset and asset pipeline, and it was getting a lot better, but it was still so clunky, and I find it very frustrating not being able to access the power of the platform. But I think if you're doing 3D, it makes a lot of sense to use Unity for that. For 2D, I would suggest using something like libGDX, especially if you have good programmers on your team. Yeah. Any other thoughts, questions? Yeah, if you've got another question, go ahead.
If you hate using Objective-C, have you got any tips on getting over that bias?
Objective-C is ugly, but it's actually not a bad programming language.
I just hate it syntactically.
Yeah,
There's other languages like C++ and Java.
Yeah.
So using Java and then going to Objective-C, I'm like, well, what's going on?
I know, right? There's a lot of things about it that just don't make sense. There's a lot of really clunky casting and stuff going in and out of the container classes. There's a series of really good iPhone programming books by the Big Nerd Ranch books. So the Big Nerd Ranch, B&R, those guys have done some really good books where they talk about the pragmatics of building Objective-C apps. And they've also now got some books that take that stuff over into Swift. You still get some good libraries in Objective-C. So if you want to use some open source code, it happens to be in Objective-C, you might just have to wear it. It's like sometimes you just have to use it. But Objective-C is also nice from the point of view of it plays really well with C and C++. So I've done some stuff where I actually integrated Lua, which is a scripting engine, and the back-end engine is written in C. And because of the nice integration, like it produces the loadable objects in the toolchain actually produced like side by side. It's not sort of, you don't have to marshal stuff effectively like you do with, say, a scripting language. The symbols are just right there in the object files. So.
Would you be able to do something like create an Objective-C stub and then do the rest in C or C++?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can. And in fact, Xcode has pretty good C++ support. You can you can use Xcode to set that stuff up, and then use your favourite C++ editor. Mm. Yep.
And then you can kind of do it in Swift as well. Swift is all this stuff, be back compatible to Objective-C, and then Objective-C is just a superset of C, so you can glue a whole bunch of stuff together.
Yep. Yeah. And you.
Does that get ugly though?
Yeah, it does kind of work.
Yeah.
We're gluing things
So
together.
it's a trade-off, is it?
It is.
Ugliness and-
Yeah, it's not pretty to look at, but the code performs just fine. Like in the back end, it's using, Chris Latner, the guy who worked on Objective-C. Basically, they hired this guy who's a mega programming guru, built this thing called LLVM. And they said, hey, dude, go and make Objective-C not horrible, not suck. And Chris just gave up. It's like, I can't do it. I've tried my hardest, you know. And he said, right, okay, I've got this other idea. It's called Swift. And that's basically what happened. But he did do a lot of stuff, he and his team, to make Objective-C a lot nicer to use. And he did do stuff to make it all play well and be backwards compatible. So you don't lose out on performance. You wind up with one single binary, which is kind of nice. You don't have to sort of, this thing's some strange library like you do with J and I. So on Android, you have to build a Java stub that calls into the C++ through J and I, which is there. So yeah, on the Apple side, it's just a little bit nicer. Yeah. But yeah, Objective-C is kind of a reality. But those big Nerd Ranch books are not thick, and they're really pragmatic. They'll take you.
Big ranch, is it?
Big Nerd Ranch, yeah. They do. They've got one on Cocoa, one on iOS, one on desktop Cocoa, a couple of other things. But you can sit down and work through them in a weekend at your laptop, and by the time you've done that, you've got the core of what you need of Objective-C to just get through your day-to-day stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Silly. How are you actually broadcasting the display of the phone onto the screen? Are you using QuickTime or something like that? I don't know how to do that.
Apple set that up so that you could create your preview videos. But it turns out if you just use the commands that you would use if you were about to create a preview video, so you just open the QuickTime application, go File, New Movie, and it just loads up the preview screen, and you just leave that running. So you can pay $80 for that. There's a Mac app that does it as well. I think I'll just get the free one. Okay, thanks guys, that's all I got. Bit of time for some networking before the next one.